If we're not going to use affirmative action to try and create a diverse student body, what should we be looking at? If race is no longer a factor, does socioeconomic background make sense?
In the end, you can't get race unless you use race. That's just a hard empirical fact. If you're allowed to use proxies for race, which the law still allows, that is, if you're a black kid and you go to an all-black, low-income school, we can say we're letting you in because you go to a low-income school. So you can use proxies. But
let me back up for a second, Anthony, because maybe it sounds like what these schools are trying to get is plain old diversity, and it may not mean necessarily racial diversity. It may just be diversity, economic diversity, or the ability to help someone climb up the ranks that is starting with very different life economic circumstances.
The harsh reality is that in America, race is a factor unto itself. In the empirical literature, it's very clear that if you're black and poor, you're more poor. If you're black and you get advantages, they don't pay off as much. Race is a factor unto itself. Income is a different thing.
Should income be looked at, though? I mean, Jeff Sachs, I was looking through some of these statistics, and basically what you see is the percentage of students that have obtained four-year U.S. bachelor's degrees, 79% of them are coming from the top quartile, income quartile in America. 11% are coming from the bottom quartile families. And then you can break it down even more, and what you see is that the majority of these students, they're coming from families that are earning nearly $100,000 or more, whereas just 9.4% is going to, or these degrees are being awarded to students that are coming from families with less than $33,000. So what it does seem to suggest is that we are educating the rich more than we are educating the poor. Thus, shouldn't socioeconomic backgrounds play into diversity?
Also, of course, we are divided by race and we're divided by income, and we are tracking our society. We have about the lowest social mobility of any high-income country in the world now. And if you look at the same data, the 25 to 29-year-olds, white kids, about 36% have a four-year bachelor's degree. African-American, something like 16%. Hispanic, something like 11%. So there's a tremendous divide by race. The Supreme Court absolutely was, I think, reckless.
I mean, there's a divide
in this.
You think they were reckless? I mean, but let me ask you about this.
By the way, reckless in this and in so many other things. This is the most reactionary Supreme Court we've had in 80 years in this country.
So
it's out of control.
If you're a wealthy minority that grew up on Fifth Avenue and basically could buy and sell your entire class versus the poor kid that grows up in the trailer park in Georgia, that didn't really stand a shot in life, they should be the one on Fifth Avenue, because they're a minority, should be given preference?
But the point really is to take into account true diversity, which includes racial diversity and income diversity.
So maybe we need to be looking at both, in your view?
Well, of course, and they are looking at both. The schools are going out of their way to try to find working class or middle class income, but now they can't even look at race. The door was slammed on race. And by the way, the Supreme Court is.
But they've got to change. I mean, so Barmak, what do they need to do now? I mean, like, specifically with University of Michigan. So they're not going to look at race anymore. What's the next best thing to make sure that you're giving a lot of opportunity to a very broad group of people?
They are going to have to redouble their efforts when it comes to outreach and recruitment. They are going to have to come up with absolutely, admittedly imperfect proxies. The Supreme Court has made it much more difficult to have racial and ethnic diversity.
And there's a collapse in the share of minority kids in some of these schools already at University of Michigan. The law school class has the smallest share of African-American kids that they've had in decades now. It's already taking effect because this went into effect in Michigan a few years ago, and it's having devastating effects around the country of now closing the door that had been partly opened in recent decades, and now that door is closing again.
Partly opened, but I mean, isn't there a better way to address this? And wouldn't it be through socioeconomic background? I mean, doesn't that give sort of the people that are struggling in our society the best opportunity?
Well,
when we talk about income inequality?
That would help. Of course, we're going in exactly the opposite direction on that also. We're becoming more divided by income and wealth, and the Supreme Court gave the biggest boost to that. It said, let the rich give any amount of money to the campaigns, because the Supreme Court only stands up for the rich and powerful right now. It has no interest in the poor, and it has no interest in the minorities.
Well, all right, let me get back to Anthony. So as we look ahead, what's the implication of this? What do you anticipate from other schools across the country as a result of University of Michigan and the Supreme Court?
I think the truth is that the American higher education system has become complicit in the intergenerational transmission of race and class privilege. Presently, since about 1995, 85% of the new white kids going to college went to one of the top 500 four-year schools, and 75% of the black and Latino kids went to two-year schools or open admission four-year schools, and it's even worse for that for low-income kids. So there's a larger issue here where we're reproducing race and class through the generations, and higher education has become the capstone in that process.
And if I may say, Anthony's group is doing some of the best research on this.
How do you like that, Anthony?
We haven't met, but your work is absolutely fantastic.